Hey everyone, for this week I had the chance and pleasure to speak to Seneca Scott, who is a Oakland resident running for mayor this year in 2022. He gave me what he calls the green pill, and we talked about his past, his philosophical framework, his solutions to problems facing Oakland, and I think he's an interesting, independent, nonpartisan character that you should listen to. Anyway, here's an interview with him. Thanks, Seneca. Enjoy. I really appreciate your time. I was looking through your Twitter feed, your bio, reading articles about you. You really stood out. I used to live in the Bay Area. I had a warehouse in Oakland. And I mean, before we start that, maybe you can tell me about where you grew up. And I know you went to Cornell and maybe some of your background before um, what you're doing now.
I have some civil rights lineage on my father's side with Seneca Scott and my grandfather's lineage. So my father's first cousin and my first cousin once removed. And we've always had a proud history of just being involved in the neighborhood. My mother's been a long time union rep. She's held every elected position in her teachers union over the years. And just being engaged people in our church, in our community, and in the workplace. And so I was actually conceived in Isfahan, Iran, although my parents made it back in 1979, right before I was born in May in late spring. So I just barely missed the cutoff for being able to run for president of the United States by being born on the mainland because, I would have been born in either Europe or in the Middle East where I was conceived at. And I
What,
came to
what,
Oakland.
what were your parents doing in Iran?
A lot of Black Americans moved to the Middle East during the 70s to escape the bad economy, racism, looking for greener pastures. My father was a photographer. He worked with Bell helicopters, taking pictures of the oil fields on helicopters with like long lenses, really skilled work, and did some photojournalism. My mother was a writer and sort of like bohemian, if you will. And my father's older brother had moved to Saudi Arabia. He worked for the Air Force and was doing research on the Black Hawk helicopter, which he actually is one of the people who helped invent that technology back in the early 80s. So a lot of people don't know this, but before Arab Spring of '79, it was like Dubai over there. Like Lebanon, Beirut was a beautiful coastal city. I mean, it's returned to prominence. Not its old glory, but it's not a war-torn shell anymore. But before that happened, it was beautiful. My parents had seaside, houses and multiple vehicles, and they had all their money in Iranian banks. And like many Americans, their money was seized when fundamentalism started and the Shah took over, and they lost over 100 grand. This is in the '70s, 100 grand in U.S. dollars that was in the account. Had to come back to Ohio, and we start over with me in the belly and my older brother in tow, who's 4 years older than me. So they moved back. Luckily for me, both sides of my parents, both of their families owned their homes and investment properties. So we were able to have a house that was owned by my grandfather. And I grew up in pretty normal, working class, like inner city lifestyle until crack hit in like '95. Things got so bad so quick. My parents bought a house in the suburbs, even though that we didn't have to pay any rent. So you imagine the sacrifice from living in a house that your parents own to having to pay a mortgage just because things got so unsafe so quick. And in my new public high school, 15 minutes away from my old house, it was a night and day level of education. That was my first brush with institutional racism, if you will, in a way that was tangible to me, right? Like not like really like the infrastructure of how we do things was blatantly racist. And what I mean by that is property taxes are used to determine the quality of education in public schools. but you have a group of people who had a significant head start on acquiring property through hundreds of years, if not, and then recent all the fuckery, right? So how do you have this group that's been disenfranchised from acquiring property and then continue that path of, disparate treatment of public sector schools depending on wealth and property taxes? I think it should be one standard for the state, but that's just me. So my education was night and day, bro, and I had to my physics class. I was AP physics. I showed up. I looked at the test. I got to take a midterm in 2 weeks. I'm like, bro, I don't know none of this stuff, teacher. I didn't talk to
So,
me.
Seneca, when you moved, the new school was much better. You're saying, is that what you're saying?
Much better, right? And then my teacher told me, I said, hey, can I get an extension through winter break so I could take this physics test after winter break? This story I always tell because it made a big difference to me. And the teacher said, no, because you already have a plus 4.0 GPA that we had to absorb from your old school. And we've got complaints from parents that you're threatening to be valedictorian and all of that stuff, and you've had an unfair advantage because the other school is easier. And I said, I don't care about valedictorian. I care about learning the material and being judged fairly. And he said, well, see how you do, and if for some reason, we can petition afterwards. So the person who ended up being valedictorian, Ari Shapiro, offered to tutor me, and he did, and I got an A on it. But it always stood out, that experience for me. And because of that experience, I was able to go to Cornell, or I would not have been prepared had I continued my trajectory in inner city education. Right? I may have gotten in, maybe, but I would have been prepared to succeed. And like many inner city children who have poor education to matriculate to high Ivy Leagues or elite universities, the dropout rates are high because they're just not ready for the intensity of the curriculum, right? It's night and day compared to children who went to private schools or more affluent places. So I went to Cornell, studied industrial labor relations, had a blast in college. I started organizing as a union organizer while in college during my junior year, summer, and I actually worked and would go back and forth my last year of college. I stayed 5 years to work as a union organizer in California with the United Domestic Workers. So the moment I got out of school, studying School of Industrial Labor Relations, I went right into a lead or director position as the Central Valley director with like 50 staff or like.
Seneca, when you were at Cornell, what were your politics like then?
My politics have never changed. My politics have. I only officially joined the Democratic Party to run for city council in 2020 at the insistence of my campaign manager, who was one of Chesa Boudin's ADAs. Lovely, brilliant young lawyer, and she would not take me on as a client unless I joined the party to give myself the best chance to win. It made logical sense to me, although not ideological sense, because I've always been more of a free thinker. But in college, I was a union organizer, and I had the same value system that I have today. Working people need to stop getting the shitty end of the stick. Working people deserve to have more say and control over the means of production. And the experience on economic mobility of this country is what makes us special. And labor history is American history, and there's nothing more important to our destination than the American worker and the American family. I've maintained that value system. It seems that this country's values have dramatically shifted. And the reason I got back into politics in the first place was just being a regular neighbor and a local business owner and community organizer. I felt completely disenfranchised. I saw right through the facade of our local labor unions and nonprofits, most of them, not all, who claim altruism, but when you look at their leadership, they don't live in impacted areas. or they don't look like the people they mean to serve. Not that that's a requirement, but the pattern is a red flag, especially when it comes to a person like myself who is black, has dreadlocks, doesn't code switch. It's very informal in my approach to mass communication.
Could you tell me, before, not to interrupt you, just the code switch word? I
Code
think I'm
switch means you change when you're talking to white people, to black people, or poor people, to rich people.
got it. So you contain you basically say the same as you're
I
saying.
don't ever change.
Got it.
Now, there are slight adjustments to communication to your audience. You don't want to alienate anyone with vocabulary. But when it comes to substance, I don't change. I don't change what I talk about. I only try to make it understandable. If the meaning of communication is the response you receive, I want my communication to be received, so I will make adjustments as appropriate, but not for it's the like when you go, like, just give an example. If I go to 98th and MacArthur or 98th and International in the East Bay Dragons headquarters, and I'm talking to a majority poor black and Latino, and then they ask me questions about homelessness and crime and economy. Then I go to the Hills, right, and they ask me the same question. Both people get the same answer.
No, I think that's very.
Right.
How was that when? So when you joined the Democratic Party, did they engage more in the code switching, or did they?
No, I didn't ever join the party. I just registered as a Democrat. I never went to any party stuff. I just registered because in Oakland, if you're not a registered Democrat, you can't come to a lot of the forums and debates.
Got it.
So being a new candidate, you don't have assets. You already don't have a lot of money. You need every opportunity to get your name out. And so they control the political system here. So this time around, I'm an independent, and I call myself post-partisan, meaning I don't go left, right, I go up, down. Either you have integrity and solutions or you don't. And that's it.
That sounds a little bit like the Andrew Yang campaign.
Yeah, he took my shit, bro. Andrew Yang, no, I'm just joking. But I will say this. Members of my campaign worked on Andrew Yang's campaign in New York City. And the reason they were attracted to my message was because they saw what Andrew Yang was missing. An actual plan to introduce a third political party to the United States of America. And I've got that plan, and we've started it with proof of concept with me running for mayor in a Democratic, super liberal city on a contrarian message where I routinely torment progressive Democrats. And I'm still popular. What I shouldn't be.
Do you think you're in a similar movement to like what Tulsi's doing right now? Tulsi Gabbard?
Similar, except the difference is, and this is the same thing, Tulsi, I can't comment if she's messing up yet or not, but here's what they're missing, my good neighbor. They're missing neighborship. The reason I call my nonprofit Neighbors Together Oakland, and we will call our political action committee, we're starting after this election, Neighbors Together America, is the only way to rebuild local politics is locally. People always like to say all politics are local, and then completely ignore the gruel, the organizing, the patience it takes to organize door to door, neighbor to neighbor. So we're going to start over. And here's what we're going to do. Here's the plan. And the timeline of this plan can change depending on the political velocity of our country. So this means under current status quo, which is by no means a given, so these numbers can change, but the approach and methodology want. Here's what I'm trying to do in American politics. I want the neighbors to run for offices that impact them. And I want to start a political revolution at the lowest level of politics. What are the lowest level elected positions And what are the boards and groups, or all the things that make up the electorate advisory board? What does that look like in your area? I want to pick 100 targets in America. I want to spend 2 years researching those targets and finding neighbors like myself who are dynamic people who are not traditional politicians, but have the knowledge, skills, and ability to perform the job. And I want to get them elected for a city council, school board, at most mayor, nothing higher than a mayor position. And those will be cautiously approached. And then you want to win those positions at a 60% win rate. And then you want to get them reelected. That's decade one. That's how long it takes. Then at decade two, in the 2030s, if you will, you want to take those same people, if not more, use that pack to run them for higher positions. Now that they've served 2 terms, they can run for mayor. They can run for state legislator, a county board of supervisors, whatever. Everybody's set up different, right? Whatever the next level of the trial is. Then and only then would you name your party. It has to remain decentralized, and it has to remain asymmetrical, because that's what revolutions are. A political third party being a legitimate threat to our duopoly that they control with an iron fist is a revolution. Revolutions don't have names until they do. That's what Tulsi and Yang are messing up, in my opinion. It seems like controlled opposition. I'm not going to pass judgment. I like what Tulsi Gabbard's doing, but she needs to take it back local. Very, very local. And use her influence to influence local politics, which is that. So thank you for listening to all of that. But that's kind of like what I'm after here, right? I want neighbors to get involved.
Do you think the libertarians are doing a similar kind of strategy? I mean, I think you follow.
They don't have a strategy. I don't hear a strategy. I don't hear any incubation of language. Language is metaphysical. The party is called the Neighbor Party. I'm just not naming it. I never say voter. I'll never say constituent. I'll never say voter. I'll never say resident again. I only say neighbor.
So let's go through some of your neighbor initiatives. I was looking at your website. Well, in Oakland, when we had our warehouse there, the neighbors were all kinds, from other businesses to street workers to homeless people. Very challenging. I left 4 years ago, and it was just getting to be honest, it was just impossible to do any. I mean, it's just, we were on 30th in San Pablo, and it was just.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're at. You're in the West like me.
Yeah, so it was a very challenging place, and it just, crime. And to be honest, the biggest thing for us was we kept getting hit by graffiti, just constant graffiti. And then the city would be there the next day to fine us.
You thought it was fast then? The whole town's tagged now, bro.
I know, but they would fine us, and then we'd have to paint it. And it just became such a cost. We'd paint it. It'd be like $1,000 to paint the whole building or whatever. And then the next day they'd be threatening us with fines, and then the graffiti would come up again. And we tried to, it's just, we didn't even have a problem with the prostitutes, because they kind of, so it just like devolved into chaos. And
yeah, we're collapsing. You're right. That sounds about right.
So it's interesting.
Because 4 years ago, it's gotten remarkably worse since then, if you can imagine.
So I'm interested in that post-partisan description, because I think Californians are very scared to have, quote, Republican or conservative ideals or ideas, but everything you're sounding sounds. I went to Berkeley for college, and it sounds like classic left-wing kind of class politics, your position, maybe with a more, decentralized approach. And nowadays, a lot of what you're saying gets kind of tagged as almost right-wing, or I don't know what the politics are.
I'm laying out here to the progressives.
Yeah, so I just wonder.
I'm an organizer, as a farmer, and I've only helped my hood, and I'm a poor guy who doesn't own anything. I'm Larry fucking Elder out here to these progressives, just because I dare to call them out on their hypocrisy.
So I'm just curious, what's your strategy for, I guess, inoculating against their attacks? Or I think people resonate with what you're saying. I mean, if you talk to moms in Oakland, regardless of what race, they hear what you're saying. So I'm just curious what your strategy is for.
Strategy is door to door, keep it small until it's not. But more importantly, tell the truth, tell it plainly, and don't be afraid. So Gandhi has a great quote that I'm internalizing now as I'm going through these things myself. First, they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they attack you, then you win. And there's a great video. Have you ever seen a YouTube video or a video about leadership where there's a narrator describing a boy dancing on a hill on a college party? Are you familiar?
No, walk me through it.
Yeah, gladly. So there's a big old college party, and they have a big slope like we had at Cornell, and all the kids are hanging out, sitting on the grass to music, hanging out and chilling. And there's loud music playing. It's like a big festival. And one guy gets up, and he starts doing this funny little dance. But it's a simple dance, but he looks absolutely ridiculous, right? Think John Travolta in Pulp Fiction or something like that, right? Doing a little simple dance. But he's doing it, and he's doing it enthusiastically. And everybody's laughing at him and looking at him. Who's that weirdo? Then her first follower shows up. He does the dance with her. And the narrator goes, if you want to start a movement, you have to be brave enough to stand alone by yourself and look ridiculous. Your first follower is the real leader. Your first follower is the real person who's courageous. That's the underrated form of leadership, is to be the first person to follow the lead of someone who everyone thinks is crazy. But the person who's leading moves have to be simple enough to follow. That's a very important part. The moves have to be simple. And then you get your first follower, he does the move. Now you got two people dancing on a hill. Then a third person comes up. That third person is magical because now you have a group and now you have a movement. The time elapsed from one guy dancing on a hill to not even being able to see him because after the third guy, then a fourth and a fifth, by 1 minute in, people are breaking their neck, tripping over each other to dance on the hill. And the leader is nowhere to be seen in the picture. That's how you do it. You nurture your first followers. When you have a movement, you keep it going and you keep your simple moves going. And then you give it up because it's not yours, it's the people. And then we all dance on the hill together, right? So that sounds a little utopian, but the point I'm making is all mass movements and real grassroots movements start like that. And right now, people are trying to buy movement. Any movement that's popular is fake. No grassroots movement of the people to face immense control of people who control the means of production, who induce fear and keep people under menticide and absolute rule and social media and all the things they're going up against. If your grassroots movement is immediately popular, then that shit is fucking fake. Right? That's what I thought. I saw right through Black Lives Matter. They co-opted it. It started off legit, and then they co-opted it and bought it out. Now everybody gets to put, if it's popular, it ain't a revolution. Revolutions aren't popular until they are, not in its infancy. That's ludicrous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these arrows and bullets. I'm going to be called every name in the book, racist, transphobe, whatever the hell you want to call me. Like Eminem said, I am whatever you say I am. If I wasn't, why would I say I am? I don't give a fuck. And I'm going to dance on that hill. I'm going to keep my moves simple. And those moves are going to sound like this. Working people, we're getting played. Working people, the banks are not your friend. working people, Democrats and Republicans alike. The one thing that they both agreed on out of all of this artificial fighting that they do is they all agreed that they should be able to continue playing that stock market, didn't they? Look between the lines. They're not our friends. It's time for a revolution. You want a revolution that doesn't involve killing people and violence? You need to build a parallel system, not only of politics, but a parallel system of neighborhood sustainability, decentralized soil-based economies. That's our revolution. Our revolution is opting out. Our revolution is taking back over our elected positions that control our taxpayer dollars from the small scale and then moving up. They can't stop it without ending our democracy. And believe me, the moment we figure this out, they'll twist the goalposts on us. And maybe we will have to get our guns out. Who knows? That's why I like guns, right? I like guns because guns are freedom. It used to be a sword or arrow, right? There's a guy named Lars on YouTube, and I know this is a non sequitur, but this guy named Lars on YouTube is the best arrow dude. He's like the real Robin Hood. And this dude be shooting arrows and going around the wall and stuff. Remember the movie when they was bending the bullets with Angelina Jolie? He was doing that with the arrows. And he was talking about back in the day they was shooting arrows around walls, 90-degree turns. And I'm like, man, they was shooting arrows for thousands of years. Imagine the sky going dark with arrows in a war. It's every which way to kill a person you want. But when it comes down to it, the great equalizer, firearms, allows people to resist oppression and tyranny. And I hope it doesn't come to that. But that's why I'm an enthusiast and I train and I advocate for especially Black people and single mothers and poor people to not give up those rights and make sure that we can keep each other safe because we live in an oppressive system. This is not an okay system. This system is not set up for poor people or working people. So, I mean, basically what I'm getting at is my politics ain't changed a bit. The left just sold out.
Yeah, it's unusual to me to see how,
sold out.
Yeah, with the COVID and the Ukraine war, and there's just a lot of things seem flipped now. It's very confusing.
Yeah, it's okay for the left to be they're making excuses for war. Like every war, there's a reason. Remember in was it Legends of the Fall? Maybe Legends of the Fall. Not Legends of the Fall. No, it was Legends of the Fall, I think. Or maybe it was the one with Mel Gibson. No, the one with Mel Gibson in the Revolutionary War. Remember that movie? Braveheart, but with the Revolutionary War.
What does Mel Gibson do there?
He was the father of two young men, and one of them wanted to fight in the Revolutionary War, or the Civil War, or something like that. No, Revolutionary War. And his son was like, if we don't do this and this and that. And his father told him, there's always a reason to go to war. Every war, they will tell you if we don't do this, something bad's going to happen. And it's never true.
So,
right?
Seneca, in Oakland or in the Bay Area, the Second Amendment is seen as pretty toxic. How do you convince your neighbors that those rights are fundamental?
I don't agree with that framing.
I don't. I mean, maybe I'm unfamiliar. Here in Hawaii, there's a lot of guns and a very strong gun culture. And there's a lot of respect towards firearms, both from liberty or for hunting or for sport. I would say, a healthy gun culture. We don't have in Hawaii the gun culture maybe of Oakland with illegal guns or gang gun culture. So I'm just curious how you communicate, or what's your framing? Maybe I'm not familiar with it.
Here's the framing. We're not safe. If the police take 19 minutes to pick up a 911 call, then how are you going to protect yourself in the interim from anyone violent? I had a young, I call her young, but she's in her 60s. One of my neighbors visited me today, and she said, Seneca, I asked somebody, was you voting for you? And they said, no, because that guy put a gun on someone. And I said, well, you go to church with me, and I shot and killed a man before. I didn't know that, but yeah. I said, wow, you shot and killed a man? He said, yeah, my ex-husband came into my house, I had a restraining order, and I shot and killed him. I said, well, good for you. She said, and good for you for protecting yourself. I said, how do you think people think about it? He says, it's mixed feelings. People who live in impacted neighborhoods full of violence, they love it. The fact that someone like you is running for mayor because you're not a criminal. You're a nice guy. You want the garden, right? Like, you just want to help your neighbor. You're fed up. It's a net positive. It's a net positive. If you look at gun ownership in Alameda County, it's skyrocketed since COVID. The numbers don't lie.
That's because
California
of the
it's the number one gun state in the country for the last 3 years in a row is in California, not Texas. So the numbers don't lie. We buy more guns in California per person than any other state, not as a whole, but per person on average. We are the most gun buying state in the country right now. Why do you think that is?
obviously the crime wave that seems to be growing.
So I'm on the hill, and my simple move is get you a gun, go use some food. Those are my simple directions to people. And not like be a vigilante, but be a responsible, trained gun owner. Firearm, I don't like to say fire. And if it's not for you, don't do it. You should be of right, sound mental health. You should not be a substance abuser. But there's a lot of things that go into firearm culture. People who are into firearm culture are usually the most safe people with the least amount of issues. But here's the problem we got right now in Oakland: it's the ghost gun. All the gun control went out the window the moment I could make him in my tent or my trailer or my living room or whatever, like Lego. The youth are so smart. Like these kids today, they're geniuses. They grew up with the phones in their hands as babies. They grew up with the iPad in the face as babies. So there's nothing they can't do. I know 15-year-olds right now who will go, who'll make you whatever you want. I'll build you an AR. I put the optics on it. I put a fully auto switch on it. 15 years old gunsmith, right? So once you got the ghost guns in play, and then don't even talk about the open border, how are you going to be serious about gun control and have a fucking open border? Right? How does that make any sense? They're obviously not serious about it. So we have a gun problem in Oakland. There's too many guns. People use them. They already got the switches on their Glocks now. So now you got people dumping mags, 30 rounds in a second or so. It goes from seeing 10 or 12 shell casings to 200 shell casings in shootout. Them bullets go somewhere. They find homes. Some of those homes are people who are innocent. So we're in a lawless, collapsing society. Inflations are high. Food and energy prices are escalating. There's no end in sight. You got presidents talking about, well, we may have a nuclear war. People scared, bro. I don't even worry about stuff like that. To be honest with you, I don't care if they don't like it or not. What I'm going to do is do what I think is right, and I'm going to give. I talk to neighbors all day, every day, in all corners of the city, and they all say the same things to me. I want someone who's serious about crime, who's not into performative politics or purity pageant. I want someone who's not a hypocrite. I want someone who's honest, who can balance the interest between the housed and unhoused, who understands that these external pressures facing Oakland aren't this systemic root cause boogeyman and drop the posturing. Everyone's dealing with these problems. We're going to have to work it out together. And they all tell me this. We don't feel safe. We need more police. We want the roads fixed. We want the homeless regulated. We want to open their drug markets closed. They all tell me this. And I look around and no one's running on them. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give them someone to vote for and see how this little experiment plays out. Right? I'm going to say everything that I know people want. Not
You
because they
think,
said it.
Seneca, are you shifting some of the window of what other candidates are talking about? Are they responding to your message, or are they just going?
Absolutely. So check this out. In January, I debuted at my platform. I want to take us to 900 officers. We're at 680 roughly. I want 900 officers. I want our encampment management policy that was unanimously passed in October 2020, 2 years ago. I want that implemented. Today is the 20th, huh? EMP. Hold on, I got to do an EMP. I'm sorry, I was writing something down. EMP anniversary. Oh, my list is piled up. So I want the encampment management policy followed, and I want City Hall open. We're still under a state of emergency, and City Hall is still closed for COVID.
Oh, in
It's
Oakland?
closed.
Oh, because they want
City
to work
Hall
from
is still
home.
closed.
Yeah, they don't want to do anything, probably.
Well, no, it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. Why do you think we're still in a state of emergency?
There's probably some federal funding issue or California funding issue or something, probably.
No, but that's a good guess. I don't know. Okay, I can't say no. I don't know if that's an influencing factor or not, but that's not the primary factor, in my opinion. It's the primary factor. Tied to our state of emergency is an eviction moratorium that has been going on for 2.5 years now. In Alameda County and the city of Oakland have had an eviction moratorium for 1 year longer than most other counties in the state of California. Because of that, people are losing their shit. People are losing valuations on their projects. Oakland is collapsing economically because no one's investing here because we have a state of emergency and you can't charge rent and people can just not pay. Because of the moral hazard that we created by having just a blanket eviction moratorium where we didn't have any demand or proof that you had that hardship and there was no support for the property owner, but they claimed it was, but it never came to fruition. They created such a moral hazard that upwards of 20,000 renters in the city of Oakland are more than 8 months delinquent on their rent. They ain't never going to be able to pay that shit. So the moment it's over, you got a wave of evictions. 10% of your city is up for eviction. You can't have that in election season. 60% of Oakland registered voters are renters. You're going to get crucified. So they've had no choice but to push it until after the election. And mark my words, the moment this election's over, poof, magically, it'll go away. There's a major lawsuit right now against the county of Alameda. There's multiple lawsuits. There's
From the
a private
landlord?
one. Yeah, from the landlords, the California Pacific Legal Fund, joint one. It was started by Madison Park with John Porter Pappas and California Pacific Legal Fund joint. And then there's another one with the city of Alameda suing the county of Alameda for it over this eviction moratorium, where you cannot get rent and people can get to live in your place rent-free for 2.5 years now. Meanwhile, the city council responsible for the state of emergency routinely goes unmasked to social events, travels, all of that, but claims it's not safe to go back to work and be held accountable or have to go to city meetings or open city hall. And there's another reason. 4 of our city council people out of 8 are currently running for higher offices. So they like not having to go to work. They're working from home because it allows them to campaign on city time. Not that all of them are doing that. It's not a blanket accusation, but it's definitely a motivating factor for at least a select few of them.
So Seneca, is the vibe still about defunding the police in Oakland, or is that just kind of?
Hell no. Defunding the police is so bad. The defunders are claiming it never happened. The defunders are like, we never defunded.
Got it. So they're just gaslighting people.
They're trying to memory hold 2020 and act like they never were for defunding the police. It's the most ludicrously comical thing I've ever seen. The progressives here are scared to say the word defund. They're terrified to say that I was for defund. And so they're going to lie and gaslight people and say, we never defunded. The budget grew. Yeah, the budget grew, but it grew a lot less than it's supposed to. And we have a lot less cops and a lot less police academies because the budget didn't grow enough to hire them, and you stopped that. You had the Department of Violence Prevention and Reimagined Public Safety Task Force that had a stated goal of decreasing OPD's budget by 50%. And now all of a sudden, y'all don't remember that shit? So no, defund the police is wildly unpopular in Oakland to the point that not a single person running for public office right now would dare use that hashtag.
So
However, they still regularly rub shoulders and work with the nonprofits who are police abolitionists and defunders. So they're hypocrites. They won't say it because it's not popular, but they'll still do it. And they'll still work with the organizations who say do it, if that makes sense.
Got it. And then, aside from increasing the police number, what other ideas do you have for the crime issues? Is this educational? Is it parenting? I'm just curious. Where's the crime? Is economic?
All of that. All of that. Mentorship, starting urban agriculture, like farms. Like we have legal cannabis and mushrooms, right? Why are we not? And cannabis grows very well outdoors in Oakland. I'm smoking on some cannabis I grew in outdoors in Oakland right now. It's a great place to grow. Because kids like it. It makes money. Food, vegetables, all things to be grown here. Our community garden has absolutely made our neighborhood of West Oakland safer, cleaner, and more vibrant. And even the people who are not the best neighbors, the ones selling the drugs or doing the shooting, they even respect it and keep it and protect it. And because of our garden, in my particular neighborhood, we don't have a lot of broken windows. We don't have a lot of the property theft. And a lot of that comes because we work with the people who are selling the drugs, and we tell them, we're not going to tell you what to do or not do, but one thing we need your help with is to make sure that people aren't stealing from us, immediately taking it to you to fence for drugs. So if we tell you and we show you some ring videos or we show you the phone videos or whatever, and we show you that somebody's stealing, you got to put them on timeout and not sell to them. And we need your agreement on that. And then we won't call the cops on you, right? But
do you have a similar strategy with the homeless or with the sex workers?
The homeless. So here's the thing about the homeless. The homeless problem in Oakland has changed. So it's a different problem now, but the other problems still exist. Prior to 2018, when you left, 80% of the homeless people were Black, and they went homeless in the neighborhoods they grew up in. Now, only 60% of Oakland's homeless are Black. We've grown 24% in the past 2.5 years during that eviction moratorium. And the average new face of the new homeless is a white male drug transient in RVs and buses. And they're flooding here by the hundreds, right? We went from 360 homeless encampments to 800 in 6 months, just the last 6 months. So I don't care how much housing or shelters you build. If people keep coming here, you're never going to keep up. Also, housing first is a failure. We need shelter first and housing on. If 70% of your unhoused have drug addiction and mental health issues, we're forgetting the 30% that doesn't. The 30% that doesn't needs housing first. They're just poor. But the other, they need drug and mental health rehab. We're never going to get a hold of this problem until we, number one, end the open air drug market and the permissiveness that creates the promised land of milk and fentanyl that Oakland has become. That's the first step. We got to stop people from going homeless. So we're going to have a big problem with that with our eviction moratorium, as I just said, right? The more I talk about the problems that the mayor's going to inherit, the more I'm like, what the hell am I doing? But someone's got to do it. But it's a quagmire. I believe that we're facing the great unwashed 2.0. Right?
The great
Are you
what?
familiar with the great unwashed?
I don't know that term.
No one knows the term nowadays. How old are you, bro?
I'm 40.
My age, yeah. Don't you remember reading about the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl?
Correct, yeah.
The great unwashed were the homeless people through the Dust Bowl because it was dirty and it was dirty. And all the homeless people in the Great Depression on the trains and the hobos and the shantytown. We went through this before.
I know the difference,
so
though, is there seems to be a lack of, I don't know if it's the mental illness or the drugs seem harder. I mean, San Francisco's always had a homeless kind of vibe, but there used to be more of an independent hobo kind of vibe. Whereas now there's definitely a violence and a lack of safety aspect. So I don't know if that's the fentanyl or the meth.
No, it's Mad Max. It's it's the open air drug market free for all, filled with hundreds of burned out vehicles, meth labs that explode, violence, and just crazy. You'll be hard pressed to find crazier things anywhere in the world right now. We can compete in some of our homeless campuses in the Bay Area for absolute bunker wildness. and not like the whole city, but there are places that I compete with the worst slums in Haiti.
Well,
How?
at least in Haiti, there seems to be an understanding of the poverty, whereas in Oakland, it's difficult to understand when you have a base of
When you have the
resources there.
disparity, you have
Correct.
the glaring wealth disparity in front of us, and then we have the escape of. Here's the big part: escape avoidance behavior and normalcy bias, and those are mental conditions.
What is the normalcy bias? Is that when you start just accepting having people shooting heroin on the street? Is that
Yeah,
the norm?
anything that's bad becomes normal and you just accept it, right? People are
Yeah,
biased
where
like that.
if someone visited from Singapore, they would have a heart attack, right? If they went to downtown
Yeah, and
Oakland.
then they're like,
Yeah.
"What?" They're like, "This is not normal," and they're like, "Oh, it's normal for us." And they're like, "Well, wake the fuck up! This is not normal. What are you doing? You don't just let people trash your city and call it compassion. You don't let people die of drug overdoses and sleep in their own waste and feces and go around acting all crazy and say, no, they have the right to do that. It's compassionate. No one has the right to disenfranchise another person. We all have to be good neighbors. That's how I put it. I don't care if you're homeless or not. One of my best friends doesn't live in traditional housing. He's a plumber. He just don't want to spend the money on rent. He'd rather spend it traveling. So he has a trailer in our community garden. A great neighbor. One of the most popular people in our neighborhood. Right? We're talking about people being bad neighbors. You're stealing from your neighbor. If you're pooping and pissing and leaving it in the street, leaving needles out, acting crazy, you're a bad neighbor.
So let's talk to a more conservative, maybe the Asian community in Oakland. Are they hearing your message, or the business community?
Yeah,
Or
we've gotten a lot of support from the Asian community in Oakland. We have tremendous support from the San Francisco recall Asian American population. They've donated. They most of my Twitter followers are San Francisco recall people. A lot of them Asian, and they really love my stance on crime. They like that I'm honest about the violence that mostly young black males are committing against mostly older Asian neighbors, and then I'm willing to speak up about that. And if you look at the recall, which was mostly an Asian, but also a collaboration between Asians and black people in Fillmore and other places that were impacted, we're all feeling the same disenfranchisement of the progressive left right now, the woke left. Right? We're all saying, like, this is crazy, and this doesn't work for us. So we have a lot of support.
are they doubling down when you talk to the people who are more favorable of harm reduction or those kind of models? Are
more
they
favorable? More favorable of what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Let's say the traditional progressive who believes in harm reduction, full legalization?
Oh, they hate that shit. It's ludicrous to them.
I know, but when they hear you, do they just think you're a fascist, or what do they just think you're?
Oh, those people? Oh, yeah. I hate poor people. I'm a racist pastor, and any name you can let. I'm literally Hitler.
Got it.
Meanwhile, my We Deserve Better coalition has homeless people on it and homeless advocates on it. I've never held a single press conference about addressing our homeless encampments without having homeless people speak at the press conference. I don't speak for people's lived experiences. I bring them to speak for themselves. And then I reflect what I learned from them, but I never speak for them. Right? That nuance, that aggressive nuance, they hate it. But here's another thing about being aggressively nuanced. Someone can just tell part of your story and make you look crazy. And the reason that people are so sanitized, because they don't want to leave any room for weakness. So when you're aggressively nuanced, that means you have to consider alternative perspectives, and you have to allow for just the contradictory nature of how people are. We're very contradictory. It's just how we are, right? It's genetic in us. We're very cautious. So we're always second guessing ourselves. And I think that is let me redirect. I think it is a projection. I have a saying, whenever I'm attacked by the progressive left and they're making up straw man or ad hominem attacks, or they can't debate on the issue, or they just ignore any facts, or they're just extremely anti-intellectual in their approach. What I say is their accusations are confessions. When they say you're cool It's a confession. You're accusing me of being cool, but I'm a person who runs a community garden, grows food. Every Monday, I feed people who are homeless. I've housed several people in my empty bedrooms who have been homeless over the years, even though I don't talk about it. I've helped donate to causes, and I work as a community organizer to make sure people are fed. I've helped people have all these things as a philanthropist to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars out of my pocket in Oakland in the past decade. And the people saying this, they just walk their dogs and go home and talk shit at the end of that. They don't even come out the fucking house in the neighborhood. And they have all this judgment and sanctimony about what actual stakeholders and activists are doing and saying. It's disgusting. It absolutely is. You know what it is? This is the last stage before genocide. And I truly understand how such intelligent people. You know, Germany. I do this a lot. I mean, I'm a little space cadet sometimes, but my mind floats around, and things that are connected to me may not sound like they connect, but to me they connect. Germany and Japan did a cultural exchange in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Are you familiar?
Correct, with the Meiji Restoration, yeah.
Beautiful part of global history that should be encouraged more, right? More nations should engage in cultural exchanges like they did. Both of these people were very intelligent, old culture with a lot of tradition, a lot of pride, a lot of reverence. German, engineering, analytical. Japanese people, engineering, analytical, deep, reflective. And they both, in one decade, lost their fucking minds and started genocide and shit. How did that happen? These were educated, intelligent, intentional societies. What happened to them? What's happening to us right now? And if you look at the rhetoric and the escalation, hypocrisy and the sanctimony and the purity, all of that. I forget the name of it, but virtue signaling, all those things happen. And when I look at history, this is one of the last phases before I just have to kill you because you have a different opinion than I do. We're doing it virtually. We're trying to cancel people. We're going to really start canceling people if we don't get our shit together.
Well, that's what's so attractive about your neighbor model. It's very hard to kill someone who you know and work with and plot and have a garden with, right? So that is a good strategy.
Brother, now that's the green pill. Everybody got a pill now. That's what we call the green pill. When you realize that nothing else matters but your neighbor right now, and the only way to start over is to build mutual aid and resilient communities. But guess what? If we all do that, we all just stop, plant our own feet, and let our own roots grow in our community, it's going to overlap quickly. Because they're not natural borders, right? What is your neighborhood beginning in? That's why I call you my neighbor in Hawaii. Right? That's why I love Mr. Rogers. Wants you to be my neighbor. Everybody's a neighbor to Mr. Rogers. Very powerful word. Neighborship. What does it mean? Neighboring country, neighboring city, it never stops. Right? So let's start over. Let's start over with the people who live around you. Because if something happens, those are going to be the only people that matter.
So Seneca, going back to your green pill, where did you get that green pill from? Did someone start a farm, or did you work on a farm, or where did you get in touch with the earth first?
My grandfather always had a farm. He's from Alabama. They're rural. He kept a lot next door. But to be honest, I came to Oakland, and I left the unions in 2014. I wanted to cook. I was really into cooking, and I wanted to cook and start a restaurant. And so I moved to Oakland, and right down the street was a community garden I had just started. And I didn't know much about growing food or any of that, but I got involved, and here you go, 10 years later, I know all about farming and growing food, and I've learned livestock and all of that. I learned a lot from the garden's co-founder, my good friend Jason Burns. He's from rural Michigan, and he's just that's his lifestyle. So everywhere he goes, he just shoots goats, chickens. He recreates his home, right? And so he's largely responsible for bringing that energy to the lower bottom. And as an organizer, I help facilitate or blow it up or just make it, bigger and better and get more attention to it. But on a day-to-day, he's milking the goats, getting the chicken eggs and all of that. So when I started doing it, and I started Ocala Festival out of the garden, we were selling breakfast sandwiches. We had a little pop-up. And to sell more breakfast sandwiches, I wanted to throw parties. So I had a Halloween party. We sold a bunch of food. Then I had a Christmas party. We sold a bunch of food and drinks. And I was like, people are having a ball in the garden. It was like, I've never seen people happier than being around nature and birds and bees and chickens clucking and they're in the inner city and it's this beautiful surrounding and towering sunflowers. There's an article on Maker Magazine about Bottoms Up Community Garden. You can Google it, called Organizing a Community Hub Around a Garden or something. And I said, this is it. And so we started upscaling it. And even though that the garden will only anchor the festival and it will go all the way down the block, the energies remain. And it just made sense, right? These are the new community centers. These are the new places that are third spaces that we need. They serve a dual purpose of giving people an outdoor space to engage with their neighbor, get out the house, get exercise, fresh air, and sunlight. But it also, you're not going to replace your food supply, but you can supplement your food supply with fresh vegetables and eggs that are not only very expensive for their counterparts, but the nutritional density is unrivaled, right? So it helps us become healthier. We get like a gallon of goat milk a day. It gets drank by a few of us. That's a lot of calories we don't pay for, right? That's high quality calories and fatty acids. And all the eggs that we get from ducks and chickens and the honey from the bees and the herbs all of that saves money when you add it up, right? You're talking about a lot of money when an heirloom tomato could be $3 to $5 in a store.
So Seneca, is that your model then for the city of Oakland? Not just agricultural,
so
but
I have a campaign platform, and I'll read it off the flyer for you so it's succinct. Part of our campaign platform is changing our city charter for a more accountable mayor. I'm not going to go into that because most people can't follow it. But our charter is confusing, and we have a hybrid system of government unique to Oakland. There's no clear delineation of power in our city, and that's why there's no accountability in Oakland's government. So one thing we're going to do is a charter amendment to give the mayor line item veto power and legislative power over city legislation. So if you understand that, you do. If you don't, I can't explain much more. But here's the flyer. Oakland needs new leadership. Oakland's crime is destroying our potential. We just talked about the crime, but businesses are failing and neighbors are leaving because the mayor won't enforce laws and stop crime. We are no longer functioning as a city, and we are losing rule of law. I'm going to empower our OPD to increase our staff to 900 officers and prioritize safety. We'll fight for vehicle confiscation and heavy fines to deter illegal dumping and clear abandoned vehicles. I've already went over the homeless part. But then the third part is growing food brings neighbors together and improves our community's health and safety. As food grows more expensive, families and elders will need to access healthy food locally to stay healthy. Seneca will lead the creation of a Department of Agriculture in Oakland dedicated to increasing our agricultural identity and viability to create a soil-based economy. So I put it on my platform and on my website. And everyone said, people are going to think you're a weird hippie. And I said, well, it's order of operation. It's the last thing, right? We address the crime and homeless first, but there's no out for that, right? There's no silver bullet. We're in the age of consequence. We got to weather the storm, right? That's just what it is. But something positive is growing that food and creating an edible and forageable and walkable Oakland and bikeable Oakland. And that, to me, will be the most important thing that I'll accomplish as the next mayor. Because that's the real solution to building a parallel system in Oakland to sustain us as the current system pretty much collapses before our eyes.
Seneca, who are some of your mentors that are advising you or you're looking to follow or emulate?
I have a hive mind of people who are my friends who we argue all the time. Mentor-wise, he's dead. I never met him before, but Christopher Lass, if you're familiar, the philosopher, is absolutely a mentor with his writings he left behind. In particular, the revolt of the elite, the betrayal of democracy, which I believe is an amazing book. He wrote it and published it in the early 90s, and it describes what we're going through right now eerily. I've always looked up to Booker T. Washington and Fred Hampton as mentors from beyond, with the legacy and theology of revolution that they left with us. And I talked to Dr. Chris Martinson. I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah, Peak Prosperity. Yep.
Yeah, I watched that guy for 2.5 years. 2 years. Randomly hit him on Twitter one day. And next thing I know, I'm on his show. I've done an episode with him. It was the most awesome thing ever. And now we talk. I asked if he'll answer policy questions, he'll do research. He's absolutely one of my mentors and people who I got that from him. I don't go left, right, I go up, down. That's Chris. Right? That's his thing. Either you have integrity or you don't. Verbatim, that's Dr. Chris Martinson. So he's definitely one of my mentors now in terms of like real people who I can call for advice, and not necessarily the political stuff, because he thinks I'm crazy for running. But
well, I think it's important regardless of your effect. I mean, just shifting the window to, like you said, a mirror on some of the policies that aren't working and trying to find policies that are effective regardless of politics. That seems like what people in the Bay Area are looking for, right? I mean, they just evicted or recalled Chesa Bowden because his policies weren't working and people are looking for alternatives, right? So it's the same. I think the Schellenberger
They don't have any. I know Schellenberger too. Well, I don't know. I've met with Schellenberger. I mean, I do know him because I met with him, but we're not friends. And then I just shot some content with his friend Leighton Woodhouse, I think his name is.
Yeah, the journalist. Yep.
Yeah, he lives in Oakland. He's a neighbor here. And I went to talk to him for a brief moment, and we shot some content. But he got clean. Schellenberger is disappointingly low in the poll. I thought he was going to get a lot more votes. I didn't think he was going to win, but I thought he was going to get a lot more votes than he did. He didn't even beat out the Republican candidate. And there's no reason for that. So what I've done is I've courted the Republican vote in Oakland. We have the Alameda County Young Republicans door knocking Oakland Republican voters for. And I've been open that, many Bay Area Republicans are really post-partisan. There's just a duopoly, and they don't want to be independents or libertarians. They want to side. So they end up being team red. But if you talk to them, they're not like MAGA Republicans. They're more like regular Republicans. The regular Republicans are almost indistinguishable from Obama Democrats, right? Like, what's the difference with these people at this point? So there's a lot of votes there. There are 10,000 registered votes in Oakland for registered Republicans, 7,500 who vote pretty much in every election, and we're aggressively court. That's our secret path to victory, because it's such a ranked choice voting combined with 5 candidates who are really in this. Anything can happen.
What's your strategy for building a cabinet?
So for building a cabinet, I've already got some ideas in my head. So if I win, I would take the current. I don't know if you know the players in Oakland, but there are two main positions you got to worry about first: the city manager and the third position. I forgot the name of it. The city manager runs the city, but the city administrator runs the city, and then the other city administrator runs the interdepartment, um, runs the interdepartment like coordination, right? Like they're the guy who has to do all the work to get all the departments to work together and
Get things done. Got it.
yeah, that's Joseph Reed. So I would get rid of Ed Reskin. The current city administrator, Ed Reskin, to me, he needs to go somewhere else. And the third in charge, Joseph Reed, has been around a long time. And we need continuity of government, especially with something as complex as Oakland's corruption. So I would elevate Joseph Reed to the city administrator role as interim. He's going to have to earn that job if he wants it. He's going to have to earn that job. At least I'll have continuity of government. I will be recruiting from my own personal circle. I have lots of friends who I went to Cornell with who have served as city managers in the state of California for various cities, who are very skilled and really smart business people that come with their own connection. Hopefully, one of them will accept the job and be the number 3 for a while. And then after that, I'm going to have to see what's up with the neighbors. The whole point of getting the neighbor in office is to empower the neighbor. So I'll immediately have a neighbor conference at wherever we can have it at downtown, and either Franco Gower Plaza, City Hall, somewhere in the city government, and invite all neighbors who have a special set of skills, like Liam Nelson, if you will, right? And all neighbors who want to work for Oakland and have executive level positions or appointed board positions show up, and we're going to have a whole symposium to educate them on what those positions do, and just work it out and see where we can find talent at from our neighborhood, and not do the same thing everyone else does, which is put people there that can get you influence with other people, right? But we're going to really seek out the best people to start, and we're not going to have a lot of time to do that. Another issue, because it's only 2 months from the election to the sworn in. Another thing is we have 20% vacancies in our city. So it's not just building your own cabinet, it's how do you attract people to want to work for Oakland? To think that this is an exciting place that's on the up and up. And we are. We have perfect, you live here, you know. The weather's perfect. There's no reason Oakland shouldn't be the best city in the United States of America. We have everything we need right here. A port, a culture, idyllic weather, access to the region. Like, the only thing we're missing is good leadership.
Well, it's very exciting to have an optimistic view, Seneca, I think. I wish you the luck. I'm very proud that you're at least trying to shift the window and try to find solutions. That seems missing from most politicians. So I commend you on that, Seneca.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, every voice helps. All your friends you left behind here in Oakland, let them know to vote for me. Send me money if they got some money. We still need it. Every day we're fighting. And that's it, man. Thank you for the hour and listening to me and providing me a platform to share what we've been working on.
And Seneca, what's the best way for people to follow up with your campaign?
They can go to Seneca Scott for OaklandMayor.com. We have one-on-one Zooms there. I do them every day. I don't think there's another candidate as accessible as I am. You can schedule yourself for 15 minutes with me. I'm on Twitter and Facebook. I try to be as responsive as I can. Obviously, I'm in the middle of a campaign, so that's not perfect. But the best way to get a hold of me is email and to schedule a one-on-one Zoom, because you'll have a meeting with me, and I'll pop up on your computer, and you can ask me anything you want.
Great. Well, Seneca, I really, really appreciate your time. Best of luck. We'll publish this interview and hopefully it gets you some more support and more questions and more people engaging and building neighbors.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.